At precisely midnight, King Charles summoned Prince William to the royal study, an unusual breach of protocol. What followed would rock the foundations of both past and future. In hushed tones, Charles revealed the existence of a sealed vault, one that hadn't been touched since Diana's passing. And what lay within? Diaries, personal, raw, and meant for only one person. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The air in the study was heavy with the weight of withheld truth. William had only just stepped in from a brief trip abroad when the call came not through aides or protocol, but directly from his father. No guards, no formalities, just a private message: come, now. As William entered the room, Charles was already seated, hands folded with an expression that betrayed years of conflict. Without preamble, he slid an ornate key across the polished mahogany desk. His voice trembled as he spoke. This was not a king issuing orders, but a man finally shedding a secret. He led William down a corridor most had forgotten existed, one that twisted beneath Kensington Palace into shadows older than William himself. At the end stood a vault door, thick with dust and silence. As the key turned, a sharp click echoed like thunder, and the vault hissed open to reveal a chest. It wasn't lavish or grand. It was simple, intimate. Inside lay a bundle of diaries, bound in aged leather and ribbon, their covers worn by time and perhaps tears. The air grew still as William recognized the delicate, looping handwriting on the top page. It was unmistakable. Diana. Charles confessed he had never read them, not a word. The contents were not his to know, he said. These diaries had arrived after Diana's tragic passing, rescued by a loyal aide who followed her final instruction. Deliver them to Charles for safekeeping, but never let them be opened until the right moment. And now, decades later, that moment had arrived. William's breath hitched as his fingers hovered above the ribbon. It was as if time folded inward. The mother he lost was suddenly so closer than she had been since that fateful day in 1997. Each diary, Charles explained, chronicled the final years of Diana's life in haunting clarity, from the turbulence of her separation, to her growing fears about the royal machine that had nearly broken her spirit, to her dreams of a future beyond the crown. But these were not memoirs, they were letters unspoken, thoughts captured for a single soul. William stood frozen, reverent, his mind racing. Why now? Why him? Was this a blessing or a burden? Then came the truth Charles had withheld until now, a truth that shattered all assumptions. These diaries were never meant for William, not for Harry, not for the world. They were safeguarded all these years under Diana's final request for someone she never met but deeply believed in. Her granddaughter, Charlotte. But as William's fingers brushed the ancient ribbon holding the diaries together, Charles dropped a final chilling detail. These weren't meant for William. They were meant for Charlotte. She couldn't predict the future, yet she wrote like she knew it. Diana's diaries weren't just pages, they were time capsules filled with longing, rage, hope, and warnings. And buried within them, a secret wish that one day a young girl born into royalty would inherit her untold truths. As William turned the delicate pages, he was transported into a world where his mother bled her heart onto paper, unfiltered and unguarded. Entry after entry, Diana spoke not just of her pain, but of a quiet, unwavering dream, a daughter, not hers by birth, but one she imagined into being, a daughter who would walk the halls she once fled, a daughter who might speak the words she could never say out loud. Time and again, Diana referred to this imagined girl, not by name, but with a haunting certainty. You will come. These weren't the scribblings of nostalgia, they were blueprints for healing, for resistance, for reclaiming dignity within a system that devoured it. In one particularly raw entry, Diana lamented the isolation she faced behind palace walls. She wrote of duty turned into prison, of femininity turned into facade. But within that sorrow she planted seeds of fierce hope. She believed the monarchy could evolve not through tradition, but through a different kind of power. Not the kind wielded by titles, but by grace, intuition, and truth. And at the center of that vision was always a girl, a future granddaughter who would shatter the silence Diana was forced to bear. Over and over, Diana returned to the idea of legacy, not in jewels or estates, but in courage passed from woman to woman. Her heartbreak over never having a daughter was palpable. She detailed moments watching other mothers with daughters, the pang of jealousy, the sense of something incomplete. But what emerged from that void wasn't bitterness, it was intent. Diana began crafting her words for someone specific. She wove metaphors into the margins, flowers that bloom in winter, birds that sing only at night, symbols of survival, of beauty that defies its surroundings. She painted a world in prose where female strength wasn't punished but revered, a world where softness wasn't weakness, and power wasn't inherited. It was earned, shaped, and carried with quiet resolve. Entries about William and Harry cut deep. She adored them, yes, but she worried they'd be swallowed by the same institution. That devoured her voice. There were pages filled with joy of William's laughter, Harry's defiance, but always laced with fear. Would they be brave enough to change the system? Or would they become part of the machine? It was in those passages where Diana's longing grew more urgent. She didn't just hope for change, she begged for it. And the key to that change was this girl she kept writing to, as if sending messages across decades. The most chilling entry came at the bottom of a water-stained page, scrawled in a different ink, as if added in a rush. She will be my voice when I am gone. And now, with Charlotte at the center of this unfolding prophecy, William was left with one choice that would define a legacy. Alone in the palace gardens at dawn, Prince William gripped the leather-bound diary and wept. The boy who once walked behind his mother's coffin now faced her words in ink, vivid, unfiltered, and meant for a daughter he had given her in spirit. He hadn't told anyone yet. Not Catherine. Not even Charles. In the stillness of the early morning, with only the distant echo of palace bells in the air, William let the weight of his mother's voice wash over him. He turned each page slowly, reverently, as though interrupting the rhythm of her thoughts would somehow desecrate them. The first entry was dated barely weeks after her separation from Charles. Diana's handwriting trembled with pain but never with hesitation. She wrote of a world crumbling beneath her, of friends turning cold, and of whispers in the corridors that cut deeper than any blade. But more than that, she wrote of isolation, the crushing silence that followed her every step inside the palace. "They will never let me breathe," she wrote, "unless someone someday teaches them how to suffocate with grace." As William continued, the pages only grew heavier. There were passages where Diana described waking in fear, imagining scenarios where her voice would be erased from royal memory. She referred to the firm not as an institution, but as a predator disguised in gold, polished in tradition. Then came the lines that made William's hands tremble. "They will try to replace me, but a shadow cast over truth doesn't erase it. One day, she will rise, a future queen, born without chains." The moment those words struck him, William felt something inside him shift. This wasn't about legacy anymore. This wasn't just family history. It was prophecy. His thoughts drifted to Camilla. Her presence in the palace had always been a tightrope. One he walked for the sake of peace, for the sake of appearances. But now, reading these entries, the contrast was unbearable. Diana's raw vulnerability against Camilla's polished public facade painted a brutal portrait. William didn't speak it aloud, but it echoed inside him nonetheless. His mother had been pushed to the margins, while another woman rose in her place. And now, in his hands, was the truth Diana never got to speak publicly. A truth he wasn't sure the world was ready for, but one he knew Charlotte was meant to inherit. Guilt surged through him like a wave. He had protected the crown, upheld the institution, even when it went against the very spirit of the woman who birthed him. And now, through the pages of her grief, she was asking him to correct it not for himself, but for his daughter. That's when he understood it fully. Charlotte wasn't just her granddaughter, she was the chosen one in Diana's eyes, the girl who could rewrite what Diana never could, the one who could exist without fear, without compromise, without chains. But just as William considered safeguarding the diaries forever, A familiar voice interrupted, and it wasn't Charles. Hidden behind the tapestry-lined corridor, Queen Camilla stood frozen. She had heard enough. He vault. The Diaries. And most of all, Diana's final act, bypassing her entirely. What began as curiosity turned into a thunderous storm of jealousy, fear, and betrayal. She hadn't intended to listen, not at first, but curiosity, that silent serpent that slithers beneath royal walls, had pulled her toward the low hum of voices in the private study. She recognized them immediately, Charles and William, locked in a conversation that excluded her by design. What she overheard unraveled everything she had tried so hard to secure. The vault under Kensington, the Diaries untouched for decades. Diana's words meant not for the monarchy, nor for her sons, but for Charlotte. In that moment, Camilla understood with piercing clarity she had been written out of history. Not by accident, by intention. The taste of betrayal was bitter and immediate. Camilla had fought for her place in this family, endured decades of public scorn, played the long game with precision. But now, the past, Diana's past, had risen like a ghost, reaching beyond the grave to anoint her own heir. Charlotte. Not Camilla's step-granddaughter, not the woman she would have chosen, but the girl Diana had named silently as the bearer of her truth. Camilla's hands clenched. This wasn't just sentiment, it was power, influence. And suddenly, it was shifting, rapidly, toward the young Cambridges, toward Catherine, toward a legacy Camilla could never control. Fueled by a wave of fury, she burst into the study later that evening, no longer willing to stand in the shadows of a dead woman's last will. Her voice was cold but cutting. She accused Charles of betrayal, not just of her, but of their shared position. How dare he allow Diana to reclaim the narrative after all these years? How dare he hand power to William and Catherine without even a discussion? Her words dripped with resentment, sharpened by decades of being cast. As the villain in someone else's fairy tale, she demanded the diaries be resealed, removed, destroyed if necessary. Diana's war is over, she said, and she doesn't get to win from the grave. But Charles didn't flinch. For the first time in years, his eyes were steel. He told Camilla no, firmly, quietly, without apology. He reminded her of Diana's suffering, of the silence that had surrounded her, of the loneliness that had buried her long before that fateful crash. He told Camilla that honoring Diana's final request wasn't weakness, it was justice. And as Camilla recoiled, stunned by the rejection, she realized that Charles wasn't just following orders. He was reclaiming a sliver of the man he used to be, one who owed a woman, long gone, the truth she had never received in life. But Camilla wasn't the only one listening. Far beyond the palace, the media had already caught scent of a royal storm brewing. Within hours, whispers of Diana's hidden diaries echoed through newsrooms and tabloids. Was it a palace aide, a tech-savvy staffer, or someone closer to the crown? The hunt began, and with it, a royal cover-up spiraled out of control. The leak was like a thunderclap, loud, unpredictable, and impossible to contain. One anonymous tip to a London tabloid set off a chain reaction that couldn't be undone. "Unseen Diana writings locked in palace vault," the headline screamed. Within minutes, news sites across the globe picked it up, spinning wild theories with every refresh. Were the diaries filled with love letters to a secret suitor? Were they accusations, confessions, warnings? With no verification, the public imagination lit a match, and speculation exploded into wildfire. Diana's legacy was no longer a memory. It was a mystery begging to be cracked open. Journalists descended on Kensington Palace like vultures circling a wounded animal. Paparazzi lined the gates, peering. Through lenses, chasing shadows. Some staked out the family's vehicles. Others followed palace staff. But the most shocking turn came when Charlotte's school route was compromised. A camera crew waited outside the gates, shouting questions about her grandmother, about secrets the child had never even been told. William and Catherine were livid, not just at the invasion, but at the betrayal that had caused it. The leak wasn't a fluke, it was orchestrated, and worse, it had come from someone with access. Social media ignited like never before. Hashtags surged across platforms. Hashtag Diana's voice. Hashtag Diary of a Royal. Hashtag What would Diana say? Influencers weighed in. Experts speculated. Conspiracy theorists pounced. The idea of Diana's words being hidden, controlled, possibly censored by the very institution she once fled. It was too delicious to ignore. Every silence from the palace only fueled more suspicion. The public didn't want explanations, they wanted access. They wanted answers. And the royal family found themselves trapped in a digital cage with nowhere to run. In a shed effort to regain control, the palace released a statement. It was vague, defensive, and reeked of panic. There is no current plan to publish any private materials related to the late Princess of Wales, it read. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The press took the denial as confirmation. If the diaries weren't fake, then why hide them? If they held nothing controversial, then why not release them? William knew better than anyone that silence could be more damning than 1,000 confessions. And in closed doors, suspicion spread like poison. William convened a small group of trusted aides and advisors demanding answers. Phones were checked. Staff were scrutinized. Allegiances were questioned. Someone had opened their mouth, or worse, their inbox. The betrayal felt personal, and the trust inside. The palace began to erode. Every glance was a question. Every conversation, a test. William wasn't just protecting his mother's memory anymore, he was guarding his daughter's future. And yet, while the adults scrambled for control, the next move would come from someone no one expected. As headlines spiraled, it was Charlotte herself, young, observant, and unshakably calm, who delivered the next shocking twist. At just 10 years old, Princess Charlotte stunned her family during a private breakfast. No press, no cameras, just truth. She looked up from a simple toast and whispered, "I know what she meant." It wasn't a guess. It was a declaration. The room fell into stillness, the kind that makes even breath feel too loud. No one had spoken to Charlotte about the diaries. Not in depth, not in specifics. William and Catherine had decided in the chaos of the leak to shield her a little longer, but children, especially royal children, are rarely blind to the shadows that move around them. Charlotte had been watching, listening, feeling, and when she spoke, her words didn't come from confusion or curiosity, they came from certainty. She said she dreamt of a lady in blue, that the woman never spoke, only smiled, that she always stood near water, that she felt like home. The silence at the table deepened as she recounted details that no one had ever shared with her. A lake, a ring, a voice in her head that told her to listen more than she spoke. Catherine's fork slipped from her hand, and William stared as if he were looking at a ghost. It wasn't just the dream, it was the way Charlotte carried herself, composed, fearless, gentle but unbending. In that moment, William saw his mother's spirit, not as a memory, but as a living current pulsing through the little girl beside him. She spoke of fairness, of people who are forgotten, of choosing kindness even when it's not easy. These weren't T words taught in classrooms. They were instincts, Diana's instincts. Charlotte didn't ask to read the diaries, she simply said she would when it was time. And somehow, they all understood she would know when that moment came. Catherine was the first to cry, not from fear, but from recognition, the weight that had pressed on William since the night Charles handed him the key, the burden of choosing how to honor the past without setting fire to the present it had already shifted. Without ceremony or command, the responsibility had found its rightful heir. Charlotte hadn't been told she was chosen, she knew. The foreshadowing in Diana's words became a mirror. She will be my voice. That was never about age, it was about awareness, and Charlotte, with every word, proved she was ready, not to rule, not to rebel, but to carry a truth so carefully buried that even the crown had tried to forget it. In her, there was no hunger for power, only clarity. She didn't ask for a title, a platform, or attention. She asked what Diana would have wanted, not what the monarchy demanded, not what history expected, what she would have done. And so began preparations for the most controversial and symbolic moment in modern royal memory. Beneath the rustling trees of Althorpe Estate, a scene played out that no one imagined, a granddaughter in white reading the words of a grandmother she never met. No throne, no press, just lineage, legacy, and a lake reflecting destiny. It was William's decision, made in silence but with conviction. The diaries had spoken clearly. Diana's resting place was not just sacred, it was the only place worthy of what came next. And so, in the heart of the estate she once loved, surrounded by only those who carried her name in blood or spirit, the ceremony unfolded, not one of royalty, but of remembrance. Charlotte wore no jewels, no crest, no ceremonial gown. She clutched the diary like it was a heartbeat, steady and alive in her hands. Her voice, soft but unwavering, carried through the quiet as she began to read aloud. She started with a passage on motherhood. Diana's words spoke of joy and torment, of raising boys in a palace that punished tenderness, of longing for a space to be vulnerable without being seen as weak. I prayed my children would know love without fear, she had written, but I feared the crown would raise them colder than I ever could. William looked down, his breath catching. That sentence, read from the lips of his daughter, shattered something deep within him. The weight of what he had endured, what he had unknowingly passed on, came crashing through. Came entries on marriage. Diana did not spare herself, nor the institution. She confessed to losing pieces of herself in public smiles and behind palace doors. Her tone wavered between reflection and rebellion, both warning and plea. If one day a girl sits at my grave, may she know she is not alone in wanting more than duty, she wrote. Charlotte paused before continuing. Catherine's eyes filled as she clutched William's hand, knowing their daughter was now carrying a fire started long before her time. The tears truly fell when Charlotte turned to a final entry, one Diana had titled in bold, underlined ink, "My light will return." It was a message, unmistakably. Diana wrote of cycles, of pain that repeats until someone dares to break it. She imagined a future where the crown bowed to compassion, where a girl could rise with honesty and not be crushed for it. If she finds me, the entry closed, she will not need to avenge me. She will outshine me. Charlotte's voice quivered, but she finished the line. She then closed the book, not in fear or fatigue, but in reverence. There were no speeches, no applause. Only the sound of wind moving through the trees, as if the land itself had exhaled. Catherine quietly recorded the reading, not for press release, not for documentaries, but for Charlotte herself. A memory preserved, not promoted. It was not a royal event, it was an inheritance passed through spirit, sealed in silence and opened by love. But as Charlotte wiped a tear from her cheek, someone approached with a proposition that threatened to divide the royal family once again. When Prince Harry arrived unannounced at Windsor, no one knew what to expect. But his purpose was clear. If these are Diana's diaries, I deserve to see them too. What followed was a bitter standoff between brothers on sacred ground. It wasn't the timing that shocked them, it was the certainty in his voice. Harry didn't come with questions, he came with a claim. News of Charlotte's reading at Althorpe had reached Montecito in whispers, and for Harry, it was more than just sentiment. It was about legacy. His mother's words, locked away for decades, had finally surfaced, and now he stood before William, fists clenched with emotion, demanding the right to access what he believed was his inheritance too. But William didn't flinch. The pain was visible in his eyes, yes, but so was resolve. He told Harry plainly, these weren't meant for him, not because he didn't matter, not because he wasn't loved, but because Diana had chosen Charlotte by name or by intent to carry what had never been spoken aloud. The air turned electric. The ghosts of old arguments began to rise raw, undigested, and decades in the making. What began as a discussion about diaries quickly erupted into something far more volatile. Harry accused William of becoming the very thing Heir mother feared, gatekeeper of truth, protector of institution over family. William snapped back, reminding Harry of the choices he'd made, that leaving didn't absolve him from the consequences of distance. And when Meghan's name surfaced, it wasn't as a question, it was a fuse. The tension cracked. William spoke with fire about media manipulation while Harry seethed about being abandoned. Nothing was off limits anymore. Not pain, not betrayal, not the scars they both carried. Catherine tried to calm the storm. She reached for William, appealed to Harry, urged them both to see beyond the rage. But her loyalty, subtle yet firm, never left Charlotte. She reminded them that this wasn't about control, it was about clarity. That Diana, in her own grief, had imagined a voice that might one day say the things she never could. And that voice, through no fault or merit, was Charlotte's. The girl who had read from the diary not to possess it, but to honor it. Still, the room pulsed with division, until Charlotte stepped forward, her voice delicate but unshaken. She wrote them for me. I feel it. That single sentence collapsed every argument. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rehearsed. It was a truth so quietly powerful that neither brother could speak against it. William looked at his daughter with awe. Harry, with heartbreak. And for a moment, the fire dimmed, not extinguished, but smothered by something deeper. Diana's legacy was no longer an idea. It had a name, a pulse, a presence standing in that room. Yet despite the fury, tears, and raw emotion, there was still one diary left unread, its ribbon untouched and labelled with a single name, tied with a lavender ribbon and sealed in wax. Diana's final diary was addressed to someone she never met but believed in, Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. Within those pages, the late princess offered not just wisdom, but a roadmap for a new kind, royalty. It was Charlotte who untied the ribbon. No hesitation, no ceremony. The final diary was slimmer than the others but heavier with intention. The first page bore no date, no context, only a single sentence written in Diana's unmistakable hand, to the girl who'll rewrite everything. From that moment on, it was clear. This was not a journal. It was a legacy, distilled into words, stitched together with heartbreak and hope. Diana didn't write to reminisce. She wrote to instruct, to ignite. Each entry read like a letter to a daughter she never had, yet always imagined. A daughter who would walk the palace halls not as a prisoner of tradition, but as its quiet reformer. Diana spoke of resilience not as rebellion, but as grace under fire. She recounted the battles she fought behind closed doors, not to inspire vengeance, but to offer perspective. She warned Charlotte not to shatter every wall, but to know when to build her own. She didn't preach revolution. She preached evolution. Her words pulsed with strength. Bend the rules if you must, but never break hearts to do it. It was a manifesto hidden in tenderness, a guide for surviving the monarchy with your soul intact. Among the entries were moments imagined. Diana wrote of attending Charlotte's first speech, of standing beside her on her wedding day, of watching her hold the hand of a child who would one day inherit not a throne but a truth. You will feel alone, but you won't be, she wrote. I'll be where the light breaks through. It was poetry stitched into legacy, and as Charlotte read, her composure never wavered. These were not just words, they were permission to be bold, to be kind, to lead differently. The final page was unlike the others. The ink looked rushed, urgent, almost trembling. A single line, underlined twice. If they try to silence you, remember, I never stayed silent either. Charlotte L. looked up, her eyes locked with William's. He walked forward, arms open, tears unapologetic. She's with you now, he whispered, wrapping his daughter in an embrace that said more than words ever could. It wasn't just a father comforting his child. It was a prince acknowledging the torch had passed. Not through succession, but through soul. No headlines covered what happened next. No statement was issued. No press was alerted. Charlotte simply walked to the quiet place at Althorpe where her grandmother rested, placed a single rose on the grave, and whispered something no one else heard. And in that moment, something shifted, not in power, but in presence. Diana's story hadn't ended. It had begun again. And so, in a world ruled by titles and shadows, a little girl became the keeper of a legacy meant to set her free. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.